I got back from a few of those road trips and just started emailing coaches, calling coaches, seeing who I could get a hold of. And yeah, Brian Smith answered the phone and was
How'd you get
like,
his number in the first place?
I think I just sent him an email and I think he called me back maybe. I remember being in the airport on the way to Florida for spring break and he called me and I was like, oh, I got to take this one. And he was pretty much like, hey, we've given out all our scholarships, we filled the roster, but we have a pretty open room. Like we don't have a cap on our room and you can come in, you can try out. If we like you, we'll keep you. If we don't think you're a good fit, we'll cut you. And I was like, that's all I need, you know? It's a chance. All I need is a chance.
Luke Cherep is from Naperville, Illinois, and attended Naperville Central. Although he failed to qualify for the state tournament in high school, Luke knew he had something to offer at the next level. He found a home at the University of Missouri as a walk on. His work ethic and determination eventually paid off as he found himself competing in some varsity matches. After college, Luke moved on to jiu-jitsu and has won 2 NoGi World Championships. I'm Kelby Bachman, and this is Let's Talk Wrestling. In the heart of West Union, Iowa, lies a hidden gem in Euphoria Coffee. Owned by local residents Nicole and Shane Havenstreit, they source everything they can from local vendors. From hot and iced drinks, to savory breakfast burritos, to baked goods, to botany tea, and even homemade waffles, Euphoria Coffee is a place your entire family can enjoy. You can find more information at drinkeuphoriacoffee2go.com or visit their Facebook page. And we also have a special gift just for you. Next time you stop in, you can get a free baked good with a $20 purchase. Just mention the Let's Talk Wrestling podcast. Euphoria Coffee. Our purpose is deeper than coffee. How did you end up in San Diego? Because that's where you are, right? Or are you in a specific part of San Diego?
Yeah, it's San Diego proper. It's just like Pacific Beach is the area. It's like north of downtown. So there's like Mission Beach, Pacific Beach, Ocean Beach, all right there in a row.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm probably 9 minutes from the ocean, driving about 3 miles, so not too far.
Yeah.
So I grew up outside of Chicago area in Naperville, Illinois.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
yeah, lived out in Illinois, Missouri most of my life, 30 plus years. And then
Yeah.
I lived on the East Coast for a bit. So I worked for a company, a startup, my friend's company out in Maryland for a few years. And so I worked on the East Coast. And then the company I was working for at the time, they were opening up a new location in San Diego. And I was like, it was during COVID. So when you're trapped
Yeah.
at the house for months at a time and it was kind of reevaluating life like everybody was during COVID. And it was like,
Yeah.
if I could live anywhere, where would I want to live? And I kind of had the idea in the back ahead of San Diego. My aunt had moved out here for she's been out here 20 plus years, from Chicago, opened an accounting practice in Little Italy, and I had visited her probably 5, 6 times over the years. So I kind of
Okay.
knew, like I'd been there, and I was like, man, I love San Diego. Just 70 degrees year round, winter, summer. It's
Hmm.
the best there. And yeah, that opportunity opened up where they were opening up a new office in San Diego. I'm like, put my name in the hat, like, let's go. And
Hmm.
they accepted the transfer. And yeah, sold everything in Baltimore at the time. Packed up the car with the clothes and the dog and drove cross country and started new in San Diego. So I've been here about 5.5 years now.
Wow. So you sold everything. So you basically just drove cross country with clothes and the dog,
That was
essentially.
it. Yeah.
Heck yeah. So hold on. Did you keep anything? Like, did you have like an N64, anything like that? That like anything vintage that you're like, I gotta keep this?
Nah, no video game
No?
consoles. Just some like MMA belts and, wrestling
Okay.
medals probably. Maybe a high school yearbook, some
Oh,
sentimental
yeah.
stuff,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
but that's about it.
Yeah. Okay. I got a question actually about Baltimore. So you lived in Baltimore for a little bit,
I
correct?
did. Yep.
Okay. Um, so I was literally just talking to my brother about this. So it's kind of funny that or ironic, I guess, that you lived in Baltimore for a while. Like, I feel like Baltimore is gets a rap of like it's a pretty crime heavy crime city. Is
Mhm.
it just like another city though, where it's like pockets of crime? I don't know if I'm asking the question very appropriately, but basically, like, yeah, you kind of hear that Baltimore has a pretty high crime rate, and if it's one of those cities that you don't realize that, until maybe you like live out there.
Yeah, I would call it liken it to like Swiss cheese. So it's
Okay.
got holes kind of all over in the city. So
Hmm.
some parts are really nice, especially by the harbor, where I lived in Federal Hill, a block away from the water. And then if you go not too far away, I lived in Mount Vernon for a little bit, and that was a nice
Okay.
area. But if you go 2 blocks north, like North Avenue, it gets pretty sketchy. So yeah, I mean, you got to know where you're going in Baltimore, I
Okay.
guess is the answer.
Okay.
Yeah, I
I
think a
feel
lot of
that.
people say that around Chicago too. It's like, oh, Chicago's this crime area. It's like it is in certain parts, but you kind of just stay in the nicer parts. That's about it.
Yeah. Okay. That tracks just like any other city. I'm sure in San Diego there's parts that are
Hmm.
you're less likely or less want to travel to or go through. So, okay. Anyway, so yeah, you're from Naperville,
Yep.
Naperville Central,
Yep.
correct? Is that where you grew up? Is that where you were born? Like parents from there, the whole
Hmm.
nine? Yeah.
Yeah. Born in Park Ridge, Illinois, and yeah, grew up my whole life pretty much since 6 years old. In Naperville, and
Where's Park Ridge?
Just it's like a northwest suburb of Chicago, kind of in
Okay.
there. So not too far from there, 30, 40 minutes. My dad worked
Mhm.
at the hospital, Lutheran General there, and that's where I was born. And then my parents also graduated from Naperville Central, and then
Okay.
my grandparents, grew up in Naperville as well. So I was kind of like third generation Naperville, and
Yeah.
had a lot of like family, history there. My grandma owned a business in downtown Naperville for a long time, in politics and advertising specialties. So yeah, I spent a lot of time in Naperville growing up, and
Mhm.
graduated Naperville Central '06. So
All
that
right.
was it.
How many schools are there in that Naperville area?
When I was there, there was Naperville Central, Naperville North, Neuqua Valley, Wabansie Valley, so four. And then
Okay.
they just built a few years ago Matia Valley. So there's
Okay.
like five high schools in the Naperville area, and all of them have like 3,000 plus students.
Oh, my-
Pretty big area. I think Naperville is like the fifth or fourth largest city in Illinois, so it's
yeah.
pretty populous. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, pretty good competition, for wrestling, for sports in that area. A lot of really successful sports teams coming out of Naperville.
Yeah, you probably didn't have to travel too far mileage wise to go somewhere. I was thinking like time wise, I bet it took a while because you're driving around, you're driving kind of around Chicago, so I'm sure it took you a while. But like mileage wise, there was probably all sorts of Tinley Park was probably
Mhm.
pretty good, I think. In that area, there's probably just a ton of
Yeah, for
uh,
top wrestling schools, I mean, Montini is right there in
right.
Lombard,
Yep.
Glenbard North, Carl Sandburg. So they're all kind of like right in that area. So really successful wrestling programs. And I think like Chicago proper is something like just shy of 3 million people, but in the suburbs around Chicago, it's like another 9 million people. So you got 3 times as many people around the burbs, in
Yeah.
Chicago than you do in the city. So.
Did you wrestle Oak Park, River Forest at all?
OPRF, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They're
Okay.
really tough.
Yeah.
When I was there, Mike Powell, head coach over at OPRF, and my senior year when I made the Greco national team, Powell was the head coach for that national team. So
Nice.
that was a blast training. We had our training camp at OPRF, and Powell, he's one of my favorite coaches growing up. I only
Really?
got to know him for a couple weeks, really, but he really
Mhm.
had a good way of like connecting with kids and. He's, I believe, the executive director over at Beat the Streets in Chicago now.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So
Okay.
he's still very involved wrestling community in Chicago. But yeah, OPRF was another powerhouse program like back in the day. They had a really good um, club team. They called it regulation because at the time, overtime was probably like the most well-known club team there with Chambourmet, and yeah, they called it
Oh,
regulation to kind of combat with the overtime name that was popular in
got
freestyle and
it.
Greco, right?
That's funny. That's
Yep.
funny. It's pretty. It was. He only knew him for 2 weeks, but for you to say that about him, like, being one of your favorite coaches, I mean, he had a big impact for just meeting you for a couple weeks. That's
Yeah, he just had a really good way of connecting with kids and like really like leaning into like, hey, what are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? And it was just a funny coach, just a short story. Like, we would do the practice and like break out in the middle. And I think most people are like, champions or warriors, whatever. And he was like, all right, we're gonna break it out. 50, Bentley, let's go. 50 Cent was popular at the time. So just a
cool. Okay.
core memory that I have growing up. But yeah, I grew up in Naperville, graduated Naperville Central. Really, I started pretty late in wrestling, like eighth grade. So I think,
Really?
yeah, most kids they're starting pretty young, 5, 6 years old, or at least like beginning of junior high.
Sure.
So it was one of those. I started doing football in eighth grade, just with some friends, and enjoyed
Hmm.
football, enjoyed the contact sport, hitting, getting hit. And I said had some buddies that were trying out for the wrestling team, and I was like, I guess I'll do it as well. And got beat up pretty good in practice. I remember winning my first match ever as an eighth grader, and that was kind of fun, scrap back and forth overtime. And I think I just really enjoyed it because I was smaller. I was like barely 100 pounds, probably 95 as an 14-year-old. And when you're playing football and then you go up to that high school level, it's like, man, weight classes make a big difference when you can compete
Yeah.
against kids your own size, right?
Yeah. Were you involved in any other sports growing up, or did you just like, no?
Swimming. I did swimming
Okay.
throughout the summer for like 3 years.
Okay.
And I did some like running, some track and field, and enjoyed those. Um, but yeah, not really. No other like, soccer, baseball, or anything like that. Just kind of swimming, doing some conditioning sports. And I only got into it because some friends were doing it. That was it. Yeah.
Wow. Eighth grade, huh?
hmm Yep. And then yeah, continued on, football, wrestling into freshman year at Naperville Central, was on the freshman team. Didn't have a ton of success. I got beat out for my weight class. I had to go up a weight class freshman year and was wrestling like the bigger guys. So
Yeah.
kind of had whatever 500 records, something like that. And then
Hmm.
sophomore year I started to shift from freshman to sophomore. I have a pretty core memory freshman year where we were wrestling against Naperville North, so crosstown
Oh
rivals.
yeah. Okay.
It's freshman team versus freshman team, and there was a kid, John Dangles, who was really good. Like he had been wrestling since young, and like we're getting hyped up to wrestle the crosstown rivals, even as the freshman team, whatever. And dude comes out there and he pins me in the first period. He smoked me, and I remember coming off the mat, and my dad and I had been talking previously about like summer camps and getting extra work in, and I was kind of back and forth on it, not really like not pretty non-committal, right? And then I
Hmm.
come off the mat and I walk straight to my dad in the stands and I look at him in the eyes and I'm like, I'm going to camp this summer. And then I walk off and do whatever I do, do my
Wow.
sprints in the corner. So it was just one of those defining moments where a loss is a loss, but when it's like that crosstown rival and everybody's kind of hyped up about it, it's like definitely made a difference for me. And then I started going to some camps in the summer, over at Northwestern and Camp of Champs up in Wisconsin. And I did the uh, J. Robinson camp, so the 10-day
Yeah.
intense camp out in
Yeah.
Iowa that they have. So where you're running, 6 a.m. every day and doing 4 or 5 practices a day kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
started to make that shift. And I increased skills, pretty rapidly at that point. The way I looked at it is, everybody's got all these years of experience. I got to catch up quick. So I got to put
Yeah.
all the extra work in the off season. And I started to get 30, 40, 60 matches in the spring and summer. And that would make the big difference. It was like I was getting a whole season or 2 seasons extra in the
Hmm.
off season to bring into, regular season wrestling, right?
Yeah. Did you go to these camps by yourself, or was there sort of like a group that went with you and traveled around, or?
Yeah, usually it was like one other wrestler from my team, like him and
Okay.
I would go, and it rotated. So whether it was from my high school team or the local club team I was a part of, usually it was like me and my dad would convince one other dad to get it. So we were kind of like buddies or roommates going into these camps. But
Yeah.
yeah, not a big group or anything, usually like me and one other teammate kind of thing.
Yeah. What club did you wrestle for then? Like, what local club?
So Ed Geesey put on a club in the spring. He called it Mark Schultz Wrestling Club.
Okay.
And Ed Geesey was, teammates with Mark Schultz, Dave Schultz, or excuse me, Dave Schultz Wrestling Club is what he called it.
Okay.
So he was teammates with Dave Schultz and Mark Schultz, and did it in honor, Dave Schultz with, I'm sure you know the DuPont story and all that behind that.
For
Uh,
sure. Yeah.
so he, shared it with us in club, like that story when we were growing up, and kind of like made it a memento to Dave. And um, yeah, I trained with him like freestyle and Greco, got into it that way. And man, that made a world of difference, training those additional styles like outside of folk style and just
Hmm.
like tweaking my brain. And I had a lot more success in freestyle. I don't know if it was just because the competition pool was, lesser compared to like Illinois State Wrestling Double A at the time. Um, but yeah, I started to like as a sophomore, took third in state at freestyle, and then fifth in
Wow.
state my junior year, and then like second in state my senior year, losing to Brandon Prieston in the finals, and then
Wow.
started to really get good at Greco too. Like same thing, like took third in state in Greco, like made the national team, won state in Greco my senior years. So got to participate in Fargo my junior and senior years on both styles. So that's kind of
Hmm.
fun being able to do Greco, multiple matches and then go out there and do freestyle back to back over at Fargo.
Yeah.
But that's yeah, that club team, Dave Schultz Wrestling Club with Ed Geesey made a world of difference in my wrestling. And one, training multiple styles, but two, just being with like high level coaches, even outside of your high school team, for sure.
Yeah. How did you find out about this club and like Ed Geesey?
That's a good question. I'm sure it was from just another parent of my high school team. So Mike Schatz, he grew up in wrestling, and his kid, also Mike, Mike Jr.
Yeah.
was on my team, and I think he was friends with Ed in some capacity. So he just kind of knew about that club, and he was putting over at like Glenbard West, high school at the time, and it was really cool. I mean, he would just do it like 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays in the evenings, and it was like $75 for the entire season kind of thing. So
Nice.
it's like,
Yeah.
hey, pay 25 to come one time or pay 75 for the whole season. And like our parents were all about that. They jumped over it like, man, a cheap wrestling with like an Olympic level wrestler. Yeah, we're gonna get in it. And they filled the room. I mean, there were in the dungeon in Glenbard West, as they call it, 100, 200 kids that they would pack in there, and we would just rotate. So I remember some high level Illinois guys being there, like Ryan Prater out of Plainfield, who's a state champ, and then the BBs like Connor Beebe, four-time state champ in Illinois from Montini's. So we would have some pretty tough kids in the room to be able to go against and scrap. So it was a fun club. Yeah.
Yeah. What did your parents think when you started to like? Well, first when you wanted to wrestle and play football. Well, more so wrestling because I think maybe football is a little more like you know about it more. But when you came home and was like, hey, I'm try wrestling, and they're like, the heck is that? What do you mean wrestling? Like, or did they know?
Yeah.
Maybe they knew about it. I don't know.
Yeah, my dad was kind of on and off in sports throughout high school. So he
Okay.
had wrestled, I want to say 1 year,
Okay.
1 season. So he kind of like knew it a little bit. So he was excited about me getting into
Hmm.
it. And I think at the time, when your son's I guess smaller compared to other like kids, like I
For
definitely hit
sure.
puberty later,
Hmm.
and when he's 95 pounds dripping wet and he's playing football, it's like wrestling, hey, that might be more your sport, compared with others. But just the like the toughness, the grittiness, the contact sport of it, like I think he was excited for that. My
Yeah.
mom, on the other hand, not so much. So
Yeah.
I remember her not. not wanting me to do it, but not being direct about it, being a little bit more
Hmm.
passive, you
Yeah.
know, like, hey, this wrestling, looks like you're getting beat up a little bit. Or you sure you don't want to do soccer or something like that? I remember
Yeah.
her trying to get me to do other sports instead. And I don't think she came to any of my matches for the first year, maybe 2 years. And then she didn't want to see her kid getting beat up, obviously.
Right.
The arm behind the head over here, in the
Yeah.
calf. But then by my sophomore year in high school, she started to come out and started like encouraging me. And by the time I got to be a senior, she's my biggest fan, screaming to the fans and screaming in the stands, like
Yes.
billboard and everything. So
Yeah.
it was definitely a shift for her, because like once I got good at it, then it was a different story.
Yeah. What was that like the first time she came to a match or the first couple times? Like, do you remember, the first couple matches she came to and you were like excited, like mom's here?
Yeah, I don't recall like the first one that she
Yeah.
went to, but I do remember there was definitely a mental shift from, I don't want to see my baby get beat up into like biggest supporter, like encouraging me and like, pushing it out there. So yeah, I was excited to have her there. And then my dad was, every meet that he could be at. He was
Nice. Yeah.
definitely the biggest supporter throughout it. I mean, he was the one drive me to the club, drive me to all the camps, getting me to competitions as much as he could, like especially in the summer, like every other weekend, we were at some tournament somewhere, whether it was an hour away or I don't know, 10 hours away in Nebraska,
Wow.
some tournament
Yeah.
that he would take me to. That's actually a good story. I think it was summer after freshman year, summer after sophomore year, probably. It was like the Brute Nationals out in Nebraska, which is a pretty big
Mhm.
tournament. Hundreds of kids go to that per bracket, right? Pretty big brackets, so
Yeah.
thousands total. And yeah, it was just one of those like I picked up a flyer at a local Illinois tournament, like, hey, let's go to this. My dad's like, looks like a tough competition, but let's go. And he just drove me
Hmm.
out there. They do a pool play, so it's like you put you in a four-man round robin, and then you gotta like win or be top two in that round robin to move on to the actual bracket, A bracket, B bracket.
Hmm.
And I just remember that first match, dude, headlocked me, pinned me. Second match, dude, headlock me, pin me. Third match, dude, lat toss me, pin me. So I got smoked,
Yeah.
and thinking you're at this certain level of competition, you're getting better, you're doing it for 2, 3 years now,
Hmm.
and then you hit that next level. It's like, man, there's levels to this, right?
Hmm.
And what I learned from that was obviously throws, like, hey, I got to have some upper body, I got to have some
Yeah.
headlock defense. I got to have some offense there, right? And I remember bringing that experience back. It was a long drive home, not making the bracket, just getting beat 3 times, pinned essentially
Right.
3 times, right? And dad and I were in the car, and he was just like, "Yeah, I think you got to learn some headlock defense, right? Or
Hmm.
upper body skills." And it's like, "Yep." And then brought it back to the coach at GC, and we talked a lot about that. And he taught me like a roll through with that
Yeah.
headlock. So hey, teach them how to roll through and score on them, basically end up on top. And I took that with me all through high school. By the time I was a senior, like I was begging people to headlock me so I
Yeah.
could score and end up on top and either get the takedown or just roll them through and parterre, get some turns out of it. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's just sometimes you need to get beat up a little. I think you can relate to this is we learn more from our losses in wrestling than we do in our wins, and we definitely remember the losses a lot more than we remember some of those big wins, right?
Yeah, for sure. And
Mhm.
that's where, in your losses, that's where you really go back to the lab and like analyze what went wrong in, what position. Like you just did. I mean, I got beat in this position. How do I not let that happen again? And then you got really good at not letting it happen again. So,
Mhm.
do you remember like first off, why did you continue to keep going out? A lot of times I talk to some people and they may have had success right away. And so like as a kid, when you're winning, like that kind of drives and feeds into why you keep doing something is because like you're winning and that feels good. But like when you're constantly getting beat and beat up, like
Mm.
that you're more likely to just be like, all right, I'm done with this. When you're younger, as you get older, you learn to handle that a little
Mhm.
differently. But like, why did you sort of keep sticking around and keep coming back when you were? You were
I would
light, you were
say,
95 pounds, you probably weren't getting a lot of takedowns in the room at.
yeah, if I go back to my, 15, 16-year-old self,
Yeah.
I just saw that with wrestling compared to football because it was like the contrast between the two sports. Like with football, I was a part of a team, but other people, I was still relying on other people doing their jobs. And with wrestling, it was that individual sport where, hey, the work that I put in, like I'm gonna get that return. I'm gonna get that out of it. So
Hmm.
even though I was getting beat up or getting beat, in competition, I looked at it as like, hey, the more work that I put into this, the more I'm going to get out of it personally. And I saw those improvements. Like it didn't take long. Like you go
Hmm.
for a month and go to practice and you realize, oh, I can hit that double leg better. Oh, I can defend that, turn a little bit better. I can not get pinned. So you start to get these like micro enhancements in practice
Yeah.
and you see those improvements even if it doesn't manifest into win-loss record. And so I just knew, and my dad was good about this too, like setting my mindset to right. He's like, you're getting experience every time you're out there on the mat. So by the time I got to my, I don't know, junior year, it was just a philosophy of I'm going to get more competition mat time than anyone else.
Hmm.
So I wanted to get just as many reps in competition as I could. So I didn't even track my off-season record. Like I couldn't tell you what it was, but I knew I got in 50 matches in the summer. I knew I got
Hmm.
in 60 matches, whether it's freestyle, Greco, folk style, whatever, but there was competition, and I think that mental edge of, competing versus just practicing, right? Like where you're warming up, you're walking, you're pacing, getting ready for that match, you're going out there to shake the hand, the ref blows the whistle, it's like go time, right? I think that aspect made a big difference. So I saw those micro improvements, whether it was, showing up in wins or not. It was just like I can get the escape on this guy I couldn't get the escape on. I can not get pinned by this guy that's been
Hmm.
wrestling for 10 years, and I can actually go 6 minutes with him without getting pinned. So, yeah, I think that encouraged me. And just knowing like the work that I put in was the work that I was going to get out of it, regardless of whatever the team does, right?
Right. When did you probably turned quite a few corners throughout your career and made jumps, but do you remember that first jump or that first corner you turned that was like, wow, okay, I'm starting to get good. I'm starting to feel like like I can compete with a lot of people.
Yeah, it was definitely the J-Rob camp. So
Yeah.
between my sophomore and junior year, it was in the summer, probably June. It wasn't even the 28-day camp. I just did the 10-day camp, the mini one that they do out in
Yeah.
Iowa. But even that, the way that Jay Robinson and his coaches would push us, they were there to mentally break us. That's what they wanted to happen. So
Hmm.
their job was to, for lack of a better word, like make you cry a little bit,
Yeah.
like push you past. So I remember, the red flag day, just doing as many push-ups until you couldn't do any more push-ups, right? And
Right.
running as far as you can until you can't run anymore. And carrying the bucket, carrying the weights as far as you can until you can't physically carry them anymore. So the point of the camp was really less wrestling and more like you're going to make a mental shift here in that like you can go further than your mind tells you it can go. Like your body can physically do more than your mind is telling you. Your mind is going to quit way sooner than your body can actually go.
Hmm. Yeah.
So that was the big takeaway for me as a, what was I, 16, 16-year-old. Um, and then when I came back from that, I remember going to that first like open tournament. It's probably like an 8-man bracket at some high school in Illinois, doing a folk style. And I just ran through people. And it wasn't
Hmm.
even, again, that like I was technically better. I just outworked them like on the mat.
Hmm.
And when you're coming off that intensive at camp, like you understand what work is. So they just weren't ready for it. And I remember one of my friends, he was like 103 pounder Eric Conch at West Aurora, and he was like, "Man, you got a lot better." And I hadn't seen him for probably like a month, like at a previous tournament. He's like, "Man, you got a lot better this summer." I'm like, okay. And it was just one of those like I know I didn't get technically that much better in a month, but it was just a mental shift of like, I'm gonna outwork you. And I think that's a big takeaway in wrestling for a lot of young wrestlers is not even just being technically better, but like I'm gonna outwork you, I'm gonna out hustle you, I'm gonna make it gritty, I'm gonna like bang on your head a little bit, I'm gonna shove you a little bit, like I'm gonna push and pull, I'm gonna make it tough. Like I'm gonna make you not want to be in this match with me, right?
Hmm.
And so whether that's Minnesota style or Iowa style or whatever you want to call it, like, being a little gritty, like you have to have that edge. And any high level wrestler, college level and above, like they'll tell you, like, if you don't have that edge, like you're not gonna last long. So
Yeah, or you're not going to see as much success, you know? I mean, that's pretty powerful stuff. Yeah, I mean, you
mm,
just said you came back and you didn't really get better necessarily at wrestling or positions or technically wrestling, but like
mhm.
you must have came back with a confidence shift in yourself of like, I just went through something that was really tough that not a lot of people probably can do. And I feel tougher because of it. And because of that, because I feel tougher, you just like confidence in your wrestling gets, improves because you just feel tougher. You just feel like you're better.
Yeah, and of course the wrestling improved, but I think as a 16-year-old boy, like just the mental shift as a person, as a
Yeah.
growing man, like I can do tough things, right?
Right.
So so when you have that mentality, you take that with you, not only to wrestling, but into life, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Was that when you first started to really look at maybe like, and maybe you had before, but correct me, is you were looking at state and like placing at state and being on the podium and like seeing yourself wrestling in the, like, yeah. Is that when you started to really see those goals as achievable for you?
Definitely. It was a big shift between sophomore and junior year. And sophomore year, I kind of had aspirations to be like on the varsity team, and I was kind of in and out of the lineup all that year, JV to varsity, and
Yeah.
the starter got hurt right at the end of the season, so I actually did get to wrestle like regionals and
Nice.
went like 1 and 2, so I got a win, but then I got beat up by some tougher guys that were seeded in my region, and I I don't know if it was entitlement, probably a little bit, just like, oh, I'm wrestling, I should show up and I should be here.
Hmm.
And then you're getting beat by that next level. So to make that mental shift is not only like I'm gonna be the guy, I'm gonna be the starter, I'm gonna be the varsity guy, but yeah, I want to make it past regionals. I want to make it to sectionals, make it to state, be on the podium, like be that state champion. And what else also helped is going to the Illinois state tournament a couple times, freshman
Yeah.
year,
Okay.
sophomore year, and kind of visualizing that and seeing what it is to be on Assembly Hall on the floor and be on those
Hmm.
orange mats and be in the lineup with the state finalists and shake hands and then be under the lights. Like it was pretty big. Have you ever been to the Illinois state tournament at
No, I
all?
was going to ask you about it because I hear it's just awesome. Like, arguably people will argue that it's the best state tournament
Yeah, I've only
in
been
the
to
country,
a handful of other state tournaments like Missouri and stuff, but yeah, it's definitely a vibe. It's they
Yeah.
put on an event there and show up the lights and the fans are really into it, right? So you get the
Mm.
crowd going with it and yeah, the spotlight and they do the glow sticks and everything and the music and the lights, the spotlight showing. So it's definitely an event, and when
Yeah.
you're 14, 15, 16 years old, seeing that, for the first time, like other kids had grown up with it. I was just like new into it. I was like, man, I want to be
Mhm.
part of that. And
Yeah.
so definitely, yeah, sophomore to junior year, that season coming into that junior season was where I, yeah, really had put the work in the off season and expected to be the guy. So
Yeah. So then in your junior year, what were you like? Do you remember sort of your goals, expectations were probably to then, I don't want to be just the guy. The guy isn't good enough for me anymore. I need to be the guy at my weight, in the state. Like, were you really thinking you were going to go to state? You were going to place, like, even though you hadn't even really sniffed the state tournament in your first couple years, were you like ready that year to be like, I'm gonna break down these doors?
yeah, yeah, the junior year is where it made that mental shift is like,
Yeah.
that's my aspiration is to be that, state qualifier this year and, get on the mat and everything. And yeah, I started to have a lot of success. Like I had, I don't know, 20 plus, maybe 25, wins as a junior, as a varsity starter with, the previous year not even being on varsity, basically.
Yeah.
And then, made that, sectional tournament. I ended up being one, on the bubble match twice in that sectional tournament, like lost in the what I guess semis, and then lost in the third place match, to go down state to, another two really tough kids. Um, but to be like within one match, and have that like 5-3 loss where I could have gone downstate,
Mhm.
that definitely kept me hungry, all through that, junior off season getting after it. And that's where I started to have a lot of success in like freestyle and Greco in the off season, being part of the
Mhm.
Fargo team, being on national teams and things like that. Um, and then my senior year, same thing. Like you're coming into it thinking not only you're the guy, but my aspiration is I had just missed state like this close last year and had a, really successful season, like 30 plus wins, only a handful of losses all year. And then in the sectionals, I just got to those two guys that had beaten me all year and, in close matches, like, um, I don't know, 5-3 match, a 3-2 match kind of thing. And then I was beating the guy in sectionals. I was up, got the first takedown, and then he ended up, coming back and beat me like 8-7, and that was the bubble match to go down state. So I never
Mhm.
qualified for state
You
as
never qualified. Okay, sorry. I thought you
a high
said
school
earlier
wrestler.
you I thought you said earlier you qualified, but dang, so you never qualified. So you were making national teams.
Mhm.
And dang, that just kind of also goes to tell you how tough your sectional must have been.
Yeah, that's a whole nother argument that I could bring into the equation. I mean, everybody wants to think that their region or their section is the toughest, and
Yeah.
I think with ours, it really, was, especially my senior year, being pulling out all those like northwest suburbs. We had the Glenbard North, the Montini, the Carl Sandburg, in our sectional. So it was just like kind of a meat grinder with some of the best teams, the Marmions Academy, right? So like,
Ooh,
and so in my weight class, 125, like obviously there's some of the top kids in the state there. So
yeah.
um yeah, I just remember like losing the two kids that I lost to at sectionals were like two kids that I lost to earlier in the year. And I think when you've lost to somebody before, you kind of always have that, or even when you've beaten somebody before, you have that mental edge, right? It's like,
Mhm.
this is somebody I can be, this is somebody I've beaten before, right?
Right.
And so I always looked at it as, man, if I had just had two new kids that I'd never wrestled before, I would have made it. But who knows, It's always
Yeah.
a flip turn. But yeah, that was part of my, I don't know, my motivation, I guess I would say, over the
Hmm.
years is I always wanted to get to that Illinois state tournament and get the patch on the varsity jacket and have that and be representative. But yeah, I never did junior or senior year. And there were guys in my bracket that made it down state that probably like three or four that I'd beaten throughout the year too. And it's always one of those
Yeah.
like, man, if I had just been in another
Yep.
sectional, to your point, like I would have made it down or another weight class, who knows? But then I went on senior year, as I was saying, continued on in like freestyle and Greco. I won state in Greco my senior year and then took second state in freestyle. And in that freestyle state tournament, I beat um, two state place winners and a state champion in my bracket
Wow.
that year. So it's one of those where it was kind of like validation for myself.
Yeah, for
I mean,
sure.
like, even though I
100%.
didn't make that state tournament, like I'm beating the guys that were at the state tournament and placing and on the podium to get to that, state finals. So even though it was freestyle, not folk style, it still felt, really good to just be like, hey, I should have been there. I wasn't. And like, I can compete with these guys, I'm at their level, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like when you look at a freestyle state versus a folk style state, sure, there may not be as many kids, but you still, if you are a top level kid, okay,
Mhm.
and you're not competing at your high school freestyle state, like that's what are you doing? Kind of a thing. So like the top guys are going to be there because that's just that's just what they do. They're top high level wrestling guys, and they're probably going to go on and wrestle somewhere else. So of course they're going to compete every
Hmm.
opportunity they can get. So like, sure, it may be a little different, but still the level of competition at a freestyle state is still really high level.
Yeah, it was a solid, I don't know, 24-man bracket, so it was pretty solid. But to your point, it was the most elite kids from the state of Illinois, juniors and seniors that had been
Yeah,
at the state tournament and placing, at that tournament. So, yeah, all through, and then yeah, Brandon Prieston in the finals. Brandon Prieston always had my number, man.
really.
He's a stud. I mean, he's a two-timer from Illinois, wrestled
Yeah,
at Northwestern. I want to say he was a three or four-time All-American at
yeah, he
Northwestern.
was tough.
He's a killer for sure. And he's coaching somewhere, I forget, but yeah, he always had my number, man. He teched me in the finals and
Yeah,
teched me in folk style too. I think we only wrestled a couple times, but he's a killer, man.
yeah. Did you get him in Greco though, or?
I never wrestled him in
Okay.
Greco. No, I don't even know if he did Greco. I think he just stuck to freestyle. So,
Yeah.
he's
Dang. Well,
probably
that had to be, yeah, like you said, pretty validating, like, gosh. And also, it just shows the mental toughness that you had of, coming up short, not reaching your goals, throughout high school. I mean, not even being a state qualifier. Hey, I'm not a state qualifier either. So, like, no shade at that. But, like,
Mhm.
going from there and turning around and going to freestyle state and Greco state and being like, no, I'm not going to get stopped. Like, you were able to put that behind you and move forward, even though you didn't reach, a goal that you set. So that had to be pretty, like you said, validating is a good word to use.
Definitely. Yeah, and it was not until that point in time, like even post high school senior year, like during freestyle and Greco in the spring, that I made the decision to wrestle in college. Like I just felt like I had unfinished business. Like I
Sure,
want to
100%.
continue this career and make it happen at a higher level. And every state has their own classes, single A, double A, triple A, whatever. In Illinois at the time, it was only two classes, single A and double A, and we were in the highest class, double A. And probably, I don't know the exact number, 75-80% of the state was in double A. So it was like pretty much the toughest competition was definitely in
Mhm.
double A. And being part of that, you just kind of get I don't know, chip on your shoulder saying like I'm part of the highest level. And
For
so I just
sure.
had this I don't know, whatever in the back of my head, like I want to compete Division One. Like I know there's D1, D2, D3, NAI, JUCO. Like I know there's all these classes, but I if I'm gonna wrestle in college, like I want to compete at the highest level. Um, so started, seeking out different programs. My dad and I ended up going on some road trips just all throughout the Midwest, Wisconsin, Iowa, Indiana, Missouri, Michigan, kind of just visiting schools and talking
On
to
your own.
parents.
On your own. Like you just showed up. You didn't like go on a visit or anything. It was like, hey, Luke, let's go check out Michigan this weekend. And he drove to Michigan and walked around.
Yeah, just showed up, like walked around the campus, tried
Heck
to
yeah, that's
find the
one way to
rest.
do it.
Yeah, tried to find the wrestling room, try to talk to a coach. I remember driving up to Central Michigan, talking to Coach Tom Borelli, and he invited us to like come in and watch a practice. And I think at the time, yeah, the BBs were there, Connor BB, Carson BB, and it was cool like watching them, be part of the room. Or yeah, Connor was there. But yeah, that was it. Just driving up to Wisconsin lacrosse, driving out to Dubuque in Iowa, and that's how got connected with Missouri. Like I drove out to Missouri, and I don't even think any of the coaches were there at the time. We just kind of like walked around the campus, walked around the mat, saw the wrestling room, but nobody was there. It was vacant. It was like ghost town, right? But I for me, I wanted to be part of that big school presence made a difference. Like to go into
Hmm.
like small D3 schools and seeing the contrast to like a D1 school and a big at the time Big 12 school like Missouri. It was just, massive. I wanted the big school presence in that high level competition. So yeah, I got back from a few of those road trips and just started emailing coaches, calling coaches, seeing who I could get a hold of. And yeah, Brian Smith answered the phone and it was
How'd you get
like
his number in the first place?
I think I just sent him. an email, and I think he called me back maybe. I remember being in the airport on my way to Florida for spring break, and he called me, and I was like, "Oh, I got to take this one." And he was pretty much like, "Hey, we've given out all our scholarships, we filled the roster, but we have a pretty open room. Like we don't have a cap on our room, and you can come in, you can try out. If we like you, we'll keep you. If we don't think you're a good fit, we'll cut you." And I was like, that's all I need, you know, as a
Oh,
chance. All I need is a chance. So he invited me to walk on to the team.
wow.
And that's when I made my mental commitment to go to Missouri and go for that. So yeah, it was just an opportunity. That's all it was, and an
Hmm.
opportunity to compete at the highest level. So yeah, I went to uh, I got admitted to the school and came in there in August and introduced myself to Brian Smith and the wrestling staff and yeah, they just had me as part of the practice. I was part of the team and that was it. So and the cool thing is they, like he said, had the opportunity to cut me, and they ended up keeping me for 4 more years. So I wrestled for 5 years at Missouri. So as a walk-on. So I wasn't somebody that yeah, quit and or got cut. I was somebody that
Hmm.
stuck it out, and I take pride in that part of it.
Heck
Just
yeah. I was
just in that,
thinking that.
yeah, just because like I think my freshman class was probably 14 guys that came in. And from then till my senior year, there were two of us from that original class that graduated. So, and stuck it out for that, 4 years plus a red shirt year. So, yeah, to be a walk-on and to do that and to not get a scholarship, all 5 years and to tough it out through a D1 program, yeah, it was definitely a point of pride for me to be able to do that and earn my varsity letter and my jacket, with Mizzou, being part of D1 program. So I always point towards like I may not have been the national qualifier, All-American or anybody like that, but I got a D1 wrestling degree, education over 5 years, right?
Yeah. Was there a point in time when, like, you know, you thought this wrestling wasn't like nobody was going to call you back or nobody was going to email you back, and you were like looking at other options of what to do? Or were like people in your ear going, like, man, I don't know, Luke, what are you doing? Like, maybe you should think about doing this instead.
If there were, I didn't listen to them.
Yeah.
So there may have been.
Yeah.
I don't recall those voices. Like I have no memory of them. So if I did, I blocked them out,
Yeah.
I think my dad again was my biggest supporter there, and he just wanted me to continue on and felt the same way I felt, which is like you got unfinished business, man. Get after
Hmm.
it. And I think there was maybe one coach that had reached out about me that saw me at the Midwest regional freestyle tournament or something. I think it was the Indianapolis coach, which was D2 if I remember. So he had like hit up my dad, and it was one of those like I don't know that I ever even considered it because it wasn't a D1 offer.
Hmm.
And the reality is, I work in sports recruiting now, so I work with like student athletes, 37 different sports to kind of identify their goals, their dreams, their aspirations of kind of where they want to go, if they want to get scholarships, and help them find that right fit school and coaches that can help develop them and like guide them on the path to earn scholarships and find that right fit school. So now I'm like
Hmm.
in it, doing it from the other side, right? Helping
Yeah.
kids get recruited. And, if I reflect back, like I wouldn't trade my experience for the world. Like I love that, I was a Division I wrestler and I was part of Missouri and it was an awesome program with Coach Smith and all the coaches that I had throughout the years. Um, However, like I was never really like the guy, the starter. I think I had
Yeah.
maybe five, like less than 10 starting matches with Missouri. And, had I gone to a D2, a D3, an NAIA school, I think I would have had more opportunity to like not only be the starter, but have like a coaching staff and a team that just really wanted me there and like wanted to like make me that person.
Hmm.
So I think I would have enjoyed like being in the lineup and being that varsity guy for 2, 3, 4 years like during my career versus just being in a room and kind of being more the practice guy versus the starter.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my advice to kids now is like I really wasn't that D1 caliber wrestler. I just wanted it so bad. I just wanted to be that person.
Hmm.
So I just, whatever level kids are at, whether it's wrestling or any other sport, like go to a place where like you can get the playtime, right? Like you can be in the lineup, whatever level you're at. And even if it's like I had a good friend, EJ Brooks, he's out of St. Louis, that he went to JUCO. He went the JUCO route, wrestled at Lincoln College for a couple years, was a national champion at Lincoln College, and
Hmm.
then got recruited to be that, starter at Missouri. So he transferred, right? And that's the
Hmm.
landscape now in 2026, like with the transfer portal and NIL money that's available. Like a lot of kids are going that direction where they start at maybe a lower level school, have
Hmm.
success there, develop their skills even more, participate at a college level, and then make that leap and transfer over. I mean, you look at guys like AJ Ferrari, kid's been at 5 different schools in 5 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's gosh, I've talked to both sides of the coin there where some guys just like have loved where they're at and they're gonna stay there. They're gonna go like, a couple guys from Iowa. That's where they're going. That's where they want to go. And they're not the starter, but they keep work like they work like I am going to be the starter. And it just never unfolds that way. And I've also talked to the other people who do the other route where like I am putting in all this work. I know I'm good. I need to go somewhere else to showcase that I can be the guy. So it's just, yeah, I don't regret being in in at that point of trying to decide where to go and what's the best fit for me. Um, I applaud you for going to Missouri and being there for 5 years because with a walk on, like you are the loosest of loose ends, basically. Like at any point, you could be like, "Hey, yeah, it's not working out," and it doesn't hurt the like at all. So to stay on that long, you know, all year, all 5 years, like just shows the type of person and practice partner, and kind of how you stuck the Tiger style culture. You were the epitome of it because otherwise, they had no. What's the word I'm looking for? They had no. Um, they didn't have any, come on, Kelby, investment. They didn't have any, there was nothing invested in you.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, no investment. So could have I walked on, I could have walked away at any time.
Right.
And I had close friends, teammates, roommates even that did that and chose to not be a part of the team. And some of them had scholarships. Some of them were, getting compensated to be there. And um it was another like chip on the shoulder thing. It's like, hey, I don't want to say I'm better. I'm just like I have a different mindset. Like I'm tougher. Like I want to be a part of that. Like it's not easy, and that's why I want to do it.
Right.
So, and that's something I share with a lot of kids today is like, hey, only 5 to 10% of high school athletes go on to that college level. Like it's rare air, not only from like you're better, like you're an elite, but also just to stick it out, like to not only go, but like stay there and continue to compete and be a part of the team. So and then you go to Division 1, it's like 1%, less than 2%, right? So it's even a
Yeah.
smaller rare air, right? So
Yeah.
I kind of knew that in the back of my head all through college, and I would watch, teammates quit, my class and other classes above me, below me, and it was just I don't know, it's something where like I'm not going to quit. I'm going to stick it out. I'm going to keep doing this, even though it's hard, even though I'm not seeing the results or the rewards from it by being that guy. Like I still strive to be that guy every single year, and yeah. I mean, I even had to make some tough calls. Like I was living with a couple guys that were on the team at the beginning of the year, and then during the year they quit. And then by the end of the year, it's like, hey, they're doing things, partying or staying up late or doing whatever, where it's
Sure.
not conducive to really like living together at that point.
Hmm.
We got a tournament tomorrow. I'm cutting weight. We got to drive out to Iowa, and these guys are up till 2 in the morning having people over, kind of thing. So.
Right.
Um, I had to make some tough calls where it's like I got to move out. I have to physically change my space and change my location. And I ended up moving in with Ben Askren. He had a house
Yeah.
In Columbia at the time. And this is after he had graduated. He was coaching with Mizzou and chasing the Olympic team back in like 2008.
Hmm.
But had the opportunity to live with some like elite guys like that, for a year. And it was a totally different lifestyle, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, no drinking, no partying, like only like good food, nutritious things in the house. Like, so it was a good environment shift to put myself in that new situation.
Hmm.
But it's also challenging for me. It's like that's not what I was coming from. They're pretty like loose rules, and now it's like tight. We gotta hone in. But it's what I
Hmm.
needed. It's what I wanted to be more that elite person or better mindset as a wrestler, as a competitor, as a student, right? All the above.
Right. Yeah. What was it like then when you did get the opportunity to represent, the Missouri Tigers? You said you did get a few matches in there where you were the guy. I mean, what was that like to, I mean, you started wrestling in eighth grade, you never made it to state, you had to basically self-recruit yourself,
Mhm.
wind up at Missouri, and now here you are being able to wear the Missouri Tigers, singlet.
Yeah, it was so cool. Like I was even before that, like my freshman year as a red shirt, we had a dual meet out at Ohio State, and it was one of the earlier dual meets in the year. And I, again, had only been with the team 2 months, 3 months at the time, from August to October, early November, whenever that first dual meet was. And they invited me to be a backup for Tyler McCormick at 133. He had had some knee problems. He's like, "Hey, we need you to come in, be on the bus with us, weigh in. If for whatever reason Tyler can't in, we're gonna pull you in as the guy." And I was like, "Dang, dude, I'm going from senior year, like not even qualifying at state to potentially wrestling in the lineup at Ohio State Big Ten with 6,000 people in the stands."
Hmm.
So yeah, that piece was pretty eye-opening to be like, hey man, I gotta be ready. I gotta be that guy. And I was really excited for that. I think they ended up like forfeiting the weight class or something. So Tyler went out and got his hand raised kind of thing. So they didn't need to pull my red shirt for that.
Hmm.
Ended up being like the video cam recorder guy for the dual meet, but it was still cool like to be a part of that. And I think if I recall, like we beat Ohio State that year, and it was a pretty big deal because we were both top, 5 teams, top 10 teams. Um, so that was just an eye-opening experience of like, hey, you got to be ready, right? Like
Hmm.
you get pulled at any time. Like even if you're not the guy, like you can't be the guy like that, right? So
Hmm.
continued to train like that over the last the couple years, and then by my junior year, like that's where the former All-American Tyler had graduated, and then that spot kind of opened up, right? So
Yeah.
started to be in and out of the lineup, and I remember like being pulled in as the guy for um, our California duels. We went out, wrestled Cal Poly, Cal Bakersfield, Cal Fullerton. That's where I wrestled my second match was TJ Dillashaw. So, and dude was, a senior at the time, a couple years older than me, ranked top 15 in the country, and just teched me, just like
Hmm.
schooled me. So I got pulled in the lineup. It was cool to, represent Missouri in the lineup and be the guy. And then I had a match against the Cal Poly kid, ended up being really close, 4-3 match, and I won like in overtime kind of thing. So it was cool to get that first win, with the Missouri singlet on, be a part of the team, put points up on the board for the team, and just to travel with that. And traveling is fun, but it's also you're cutting weight while you're traveling, so it's not the best experience necessarily until like after the competition is done. Now we can eat, now we can put it in. Like the way back is way more fun than the way there, right? So, but yeah, it was cool to put all the hard work in and then yeah, be part of the lineup, be part of the team, and make it count.
Yeah. And I was thinking about this also as we're kind of talking about your time at Missouri and you know, um, I work with Coach Joe. I'm actually his office mate, so like we share an office together,
Yeah.
and we don't really talk about guests a whole lot on the podcast, but like every once a couple times he has pointed me in directions of people, and you were the second one. John Ernesti was the first one, but then you came up. So like out of all the people that Joe could recommend, and out
Mhm.
of he knows. how many people? He's been around forever. You were the second person really that he was like, hey, you know who you should talk to? So I mean, like I just feel like I just wanted to mention like that's the impression that you left on somebody in that program from being where you were and start and like, that's I'm just saying like that's the impression that you left on somebody. So I didn't know if you like kind of ever thought about like, what did I mean to the team? Where was I at? Like I was a nobody. I wasn't recruited. I was just, at times I felt like a nuisance. And it's like, no, see, like there was a guy on staff who thought this highly of you, you know?
Yeah, I don't know if I have the words to put to that. Like, obviously, it makes me feel really good and special in a way. As you said, he knows many, many people, definitely hundreds of wrestlers for sure that he could recommend to be on there. So the fact that he would think of me makes me feel good for sure. And I think that's maybe the mindset piece or the toughness piece or the mentorship piece is I just felt like I wanted to not only be the starter and be a good wrestler, like I wanted to be a leader, I wanted to be a captain of the team, I wanted to be influential, I wanted to be someone that people could point to and be like, hey, follow that guy, like he's doing the right things. So somewhere along the way, that makes an impact with coaches that, can recognize that from that next level. And Coach Johnson was awesome, man. I think I was telling you a story earlier. He beat the crap out of me so many times, and I love I love the skill that I took away from that, but I hated going with it, man, because he was like Iowa style, like heavy on your head, and would never um, let up. He was like gonna make you work. So if nothing, if you weren't getting better at wrestling, your conditioning was getting good when you were going with Coach Joe
Yeah.
and had an opportunity to work with him and Lee Pritz and Sean Charles and Coach Horton, who's over at Air Force, and
Oh yeah, Bart, I forgot.
Bart Horton was there my freshman year,
Yeah.
so I had a chance to work with a lot of really high level coaches. Obviously, Brian Smith, Coach McNamara, Pat McNamara, and then the guys that would move on and come back and coach like Ben Askren and Tyron Woodley and Matt Pell and all these guys that were
Jeez.
high level All Americans that would come back and continue to coach with us. So it's cool like seeing that over the years. And I mean, I talk about maybe my teammates at Missouri more than I talk about myself because I really just didn't have those accomplishments to speak of. But my teammates did, and I was in the room. I mean, with the Ben Askren, the Mike Chandlers, the Tyron Woodley's. When I was a freshman, that's when Ben won his second title. So he was a second time national champion, four-time finalist, Hodge Trophy winner. And we took third in the country that year. I think that's maybe the highest Missouri's ever
I think
played
so too.
to a
Coach Joe's talked
national.
about it, and it kind of burns him to this day, though. I'll tell you that that
Yeah.
team was good enough to win it, and it just didn't happen. So it burns him to
We
this day. But
Yeah, we had been ranked number one throughout the season, and I think like Max Askren had a really tough tournament. A couple guys that we had a really tough tournament, so just didn't show up there. And and guys that went on to be All-Americans, and Max ended up being a national champion, right? It just
yeah,
wasn't that year, right?
yeah,
So yeah, yeah. To his point, like we could have even done better, but. Yeah, and then to be teammates, like Mark Ellis was a national champion during my time. When I was a senior, Drake Hotteshelt was a freshman, and he was a national champion. And Drake and I had a lot of good scraps growing up.
hmm
He was beating me up to get ready for that. So to be in like rare air with all Americans and national champions and really successful teams that were constantly placing in the top five, top 10 in the country was a pretty cool thing. Um, so there's the coaching aspect and then the relationships built through teammates. And I would say my lifelong friends, the longest relationships I had are from some of those teams, growing up. So yeah, like I said, wouldn't trade the experience at Missouri, for the world. So
yeah. And I'll say another reason why he recommended you was actually because of your world champions, chips as in Nogi Jiu-Jitsu. So I wanted to pivot there a little bit
yeah.
to how you got into jiu-jitsu. And first off, why specifically do you wrestle or not wrestle? Why do you compete in no-gi? And like, what do you have against the gi? You just don't like it or what?
Pajamas, man. I don't want to be wearing pajamas when I'm competing. No, I mean, so when I graduated, 2010, and then stayed on the extra year for 2011, finished out the season. That summer, I'd come back home, started working a little bit, and when you've been in a D1 room or any wrestling room for 5 years, and you're practicing every day, competing every other weekend, and then all of a sudden it's just like done. You're like, man, I gotta have something. I gotta have an outlet. I gotta push and. Was coaching obviously, but needed something for myself.
Well,
So,
you were coaching? You got into coaching after that?
high school, yeah, yeah. I coached
Nice.
at Naperville Central. I
Okay.
coached at Joliet West and Matia Valley, for a few years, for like 7 years out in
Cool.
Illinois,
Okay.
and worked with a bunch of really good teams and state place winners, state finalists. My brother, actually, my first year out of college, my brother was a senior, so I had to go back and work
Oh,
with him
heck
and
yeah.
help
Yeah,
him through his season. And that was a really special season to be able to be a coach fully, for him and for that team, like my alma mater, Naperville Central, but also like with my brother as a senior. So that was a
for
fun.
sure. For sure.
But on the grappling side, yeah, I wanted an outlet, and I had a buddy that was working at Carlson Gracie team out in Aurora, Illinois. And he was like, "Hey, come in, come check it out. I think you like this thing." And I remember going to my first ever, jiu-jitsu practice. I'm coming in hot Division 1 wrestler, thinking I'm gonna
Yeah,
trash
yeah.
everybody. And I remember they put me with some like amateur MMA fighters, but they were like blue belts. They were, they had been, doing jiu-jitsu for a couple years. And I went like a 6 minute round, and in 6 minutes, they must have choked me out or armbarred me 6 times in 6 minutes. So every like 30 seconds, I was getting submitted, and I was like, dang. Like, I think a lot of people like have that experience, and it's fight or flight, right? Like they run away. It's like, man, I want no part of that. But for me, I was
Hmm.
like, I need to learn this. I don't know what this is, but I got to learn this, and this is fun. So for 6 months, I just started doing jujitsu and gi and no-gi, and I got beat up like bad, and
Hmm.
it was one of those. It took me 6 months to learn how not to get submitted, and then once I
Hmm.
could not get submitted, then I could hang with guys because then I could last, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, in those goes. And that's when I started to implement and do my offense. So I think the no gi versus gi thing is just a natural gravitation towards um, having the same grips or similar grips to wrestling, where as wrestlers, the thing I learned early on with wrestling compared to jiu-jitsu is like with wrestling, we have very inferior grips because you can't lock around the body, right? Like you can't
Right.
have certain grips that are illegal.
Yeah.
And then jiu-jitsu starts to open that up. So it's like, oh man, I can start to use the lock around the body.
Oh,
I can start to
yeah.
use the lock around the neck, right? So it's just like making that simple mind shift. But the gi adds a whole nother layer of it where you can now grab the collar, you can grab the sleeve, you can grab the pant legs, right? So it's that if we were in a street fight, and you wouldn't be naked, you'd be wearing a jacket, you'd be wearing pants. Like, how do we implement like those tools as well? So I like both. I just think it gravitated towards no-gi because it's those same grips as wrestling, right?
Makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
hmm But yeah, I did jujitsu solely for 2 years, I want to say, and started to get in some comps and, win some tournaments locally and got promoted from my white belt to my blue belt. And, the gym that I was training at was pretty heavily focused MMA gym too. There were a lot of amateur and pro fighters that were training out of there. Ricardo Lamas, Stephan Bonner, guys that were like early on in the UFC, like they were coming out of like Carlson Gracie lineage, Darren Elkins. But yeah, they had me go with a lot of those guys. And, just because, oh, he's fighting a wrestler coming up, he should go with you. And I had
Mhm.
zero striking abilities. So they just kind of patted me up and said, go for it. And I would take them down or they couldn't take me down. So obviously there was the wrestling element to it. And I remember my coach, Jeff Neal, after I had won, a few tournaments and was doing well in jiu-jitsu, and he saw how I was doing wrestling wise against these guys. He's like, you should do this thing. You should do some MMA. You should take some fights. I remember looking at him and I was like, I don't want to get hit in the face, man. I'm good. Got to protect the moneymaker over here.
Yeah,
So,
right. Yep, yep.
um, and he hit me with the, hey, man, you don't want to be looking back at your life 40 years old, 50 years old, and say you could have done well and never even tried. And
Gotcha.
and I was like, dang, dude. Because like I saw myself like taking some of these UFC guys down, and I was like,
Mm,
all right, well, maybe I'll train, I'll do some striking and do it. And then he got me into boxing, he got me into Muay Thai. I started doing that for like 3 or 4 months. I took my first amateur fight, and I won. I won the amateur fight, and it was one of those. I remember the moment in the fight where I was about to punch him and I was like, I don't have to hold back. So,
hmm.
and any sparring or any practices you're doing, you're always holding back a little bit. It's 50%,
Sure.
it's 80%, right? And I was like, man, I don't have to hold back anymore. So that was just a moment where like I kind of like that where I can be in an environment where I don't have to hold back. I can go full bore,
Yeah.
throttle down and go after it. So I won that first fight, and then it kind of became an addiction. Like I like this feeling, want to go after
Hmm.
it. So I took I like 7 amateur fights. Went 7-0, had two
Wow.
belts amateur, and then pivoted to pro in 2016. So had my first pro fight in 2016, and then I went like 3-2 as a pro. So I had like 5 pro fights as well.
Wow.
So, but all my fights, I mean, if I could say anything about my fighting career, no fight went to the distance. So it was always either I was finishing them or they were
Hmm.
finishing me. It was, that pin or pin get pinned mentality, right? Where
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
hey, we're gonna scrap and it's not gonna be for a long time, but it'll be for a good time.
Yeah. Is that when you started after you're done with your pro fighting? Is that when you really turned to, grappling and jujitsu and nogi?
Yeah, I taken a year off to move out to Maryland, as I had talked about, and I trained out there, took a fight, and then I had another fight lined up with the same organization out in Baltimore in April 2020. And
Hmm.
a month before that, COVID,
COVID.
world shut
Okay.
down, right?
Yep.
So, and that was pretty much the story of every MMA fighter that wasn't with the UFC is like all these organizations, they're shut down, not able to do events. So, yeah, I made that move out to California, and I thought when I first moved here that I wanted to do MMA. Then I started training with some high level guys that were out in San Diego. And I was like, maybe I just want to do jiu-jitsu for a while.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I got connected with Coach Barrett Yoshida out here. And he's, ADCC Hall of Famer, world renowned, black belt,
Jeez,
on the
how'd you get
scene.
connected with him?
I have to think about that. So when I first moved out here, I hit up the Carlson Gracie team affiliate. The
Okay.
headquarters are out here for California, and it's up in Temecula, which, if you don't know the area, it's probably a good 45 minutes, hour solid north of where I'm at in San
Okay.
Diego. So I was going up there to train, but then real quick, it's like, this is pretty far. Like I can't be making this commute all the time. Thomas Cronin, the head coach out there, he connected me with Game Bread down in Chula Vista. That's Herman Torrado's gym, who is a big Bellator fighter, and he's got a lot of guys that have come out and trained with him, like Dominic Cruz and Jeremy Stevens, and a whole bunch of other MMA fighters. And then same thing, it was kind of the 25, 30 minutes away. It's like, I don't know if I can get here every day or, on a regular basis. And he was like,
Right.
well, my coach for jiu-jitsu, he's up in your area. He's like 7 minutes down the road in Point Loma here. So I started going to Barrett, and man, Barrett is like a savant when it comes to jiu-jitsu. Like he's just one of
Mm-hmm.
those that has a plethora of knowledge, and every time you go there, you're learning something new. And this is coming from somebody that had been doing jiu-jitsu for 10 years at that point, and like every practice I go to, I'm like learning something new, and it's expanded me. So I was like, this is the coach I want to train with. So now I've been, under Barrett for, yeah, the last 4 or 5 years now. And he's now in Pacific Beach with Chris Lieben, former UFC fighter, longtime UFC vet. And they run a really good shop right there that I've been going to for the last few years. But yeah, I was just there, yesterday morning, training, getting some jiu-jitsu in, and just really
Yeah.
focused on, yeah, honing in my craft with jiu-jitsu and mostly, I would say like 80% no-gi and 20% gi has kind of been my method over the years. And
Hmm.
now I'm trying to also expand the gi games. So the last few weeks I've been training in gi, want to compete in some, tournaments this summer in the gi. But yeah, I had the opportunity to, when I first moved here, I was like, man, I want to get as many jiu-jitsu competitions as I can. I feel like I haven't been competing in jiu-jitsu because I, focused solely on MMA for the last 3 or 4 years. And
Yeah.
so I got here and I was like, man, I'm just gonna fill the calendar. So I think that first year out here, I maybe did a tournament every month. So I was doing like 10, 11 throughout the year and just got same thing, a lot of experience. Like we were talking about wrestling, like win or lose, I'm just gonna get the experience and being on the mat. And these past couple years, in December, I had the opportunity to compete at the Masters Worlds IBJJF, and IBJJF is like the most well-known organization in
Hmm.
jiu-jitsu. And went out there in Vegas. It's a big tournament. I mean, they have 4,000 some competitors in various brackets, but they break it up into weight class, age division, and also belt level, right? So me being a brown belt was competing with other brown belts in my
Hmm.
weight and age, but had the chance to run a bracket and get that first place medal and be on top of the podium. So world champion under that division in no-gi as a brown belt. So it's pretty cool to like have the opportunity to compete all these years and then have the success on that front as well. And just like we talked about, like that
Hmm.
um, unrealized dream or accomplishment, like you had this goal out there, like it's just always pivoting, always moving. I think us as high achievers, like we want to strive for something better. So that was always a goal of mine is to like win that, world
Hmm.
title. And I've done that now. And now I'm competing and going on to the next thing and trying to achieve that next belt and that next world title, right? So
Yeah, and you won another one, right? As a purple belt, correct?
yeah. Yep. So the with jujitsu, there's only five belts. It's white, blue, purple, brown, black, right? And yeah, as a purple belt, I won that competition, and then when
Heck
I
yeah.
got promoted that next year up to brown belt, I win a couple of times and didn't win, and then this
Hmm.
past year I finally won it at the brown belt level as well. So
Nice.
yeah, world champion at multiple levels in nogi.
Yeah. Wow. I was curious, um, if you've ever reflected on your success in Nogi, being a world champ, two-time world champ, and looking back at like wrestling and seeing and wondering why you're having this a lot of success in jujitsu, but you didn't quite have that success in wrestling. Normally you might think, and this is just me assuming, so just enlighten me, I guess, why, if you can answer, there wasn't success in both. Like you would think they would kind of go hand in hand a little bit, but
Mhm. It's a great question. As you know, like everybody's style in wrestling is very different. I think that's what makes it such a beautiful sport and a beautiful art in a sense of like you get to
Mhm.
develop your own. So there's a plethora of knowledge and techniques that are out there, but then you get to hone it in and make it your own craft, right?
Yeah.
So for wrestling, one, there's maybe a starting later than others piece of it, but more I think I just enjoyed the scramble element in wrestling,
Mhm.
and maybe that's why I really wanted to go to Missouri too, with the Askins, being known for that. And
For
I got a
sure.
chance to work with Mike Ironman with Ironman Elite, and yeah, man, he was a savant in wrestling for scrambling. Like he was a killer, man. And I learned so much from him over the years about the game of wrestling and how it's not just takedowns and escapes and turns. Like there's all these other positions that we can be in. So I thrived in that aspect of it, of just being on the mat, scrambling, moving around. I was never the best feet wrestler, like for takedowns or defense. In fact,
Mhm.
I had this conversation with some coaches about giving up the first point in many of my matches. Or not giving it up, but just getting scored on first. It's like you got
Yeah,
to go
right.
out there and get that first point, right? And I don't know, I just was never worried about it in a sense of like, hey, I can get it back, but to my detriment over the long-term career,
Mhm.
right? So I
Yeah.
think to answer your question, like styles, right? My style, I just enjoyed being on the mat. I enjoyed scrambling. My favorite position, my best position was on top, like getting cradles, turning, cranking it, working for positions, making them being a tough ride, right?
Hmm.
So I think between scrambling and being a tough ride, like those two things like really translate to jiu-jitsu because you're looking for those scramble positions, you're looking for submissions, and with wrestling, there's one finishing position, pin them,
Yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
got to get their shoulders to the mat. Everything else you can score, but like that's the only way to end it, right?
Yep.
With jiu-jitsu, there's infinite numbers of ways to end the match.
Mhm.
So whether it's a choke or a joint lock or threatening a knee, an elbow, an ankle, right?
Right.
There's so many different ways that you can finish. Like, so I think the scrambling combined with the ability to finish and end it in many ways, like I just really thrive in that nature, in that position.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think a
Yeah.
lot of wrestlers could. I mean, so I'm building this channel right now, Takedown to Tap, which is all my years of wrestling experience, 15 plus years, and all my years of jiu-jitsu, 15 plus years, and kind of how I made that transition and how I used wrestling to enhance the jiu-jitsu piece of it.
Hmm.
And like what skills translate and work really well and what skills don't translate and don't work well and like what things to avoid to have the success in wrestling. So in thinking through that, it's just yeah, like wrestlers have a really good base, a good foundation. The hips, the ability to throw, to move, to scramble. Um,
Hmm.
but there's definitely like pitfalls that you might like now, like if I win against a D1 wrestler with my 15 years of jiu-jitsu experience, I'm submitting them in 30 seconds or less.
Yeah.
Just because having that knowledge and having that skill set. So want to take all that and impart it back onto a new generation of like, hey, you have this base of skills, like we can use it over here as well.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Well, this is another like kind of off topic question, kind of, but like I don't know how do you advance in belts? Like how do you go from like purple to brown to black? Like what's the credential or whatever to get there?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty subjective in the sense of
Okay.
every academy does it in a different capacity. So I think
Gotcha.
it's made up in different elements. Some do it based on comp, like if you compete and you win or at least show your skill set and that you're advancing and can utilize it at the level that you're at, you can get advanced that way. Some academies do it on time and grade, so like attendance and like just tenure with the academy.
Hmm.
And other academies, like I've had this conversation with my coach, with Barrett, and he's in the sense of like not only do I want you to have all those things, like the time and also the skill set, but also like we want you to be a really good character off the mat. Like we want you to be a good representative of not only jiu-jitsu but martial arts and the team outside of this. So yeah, I think every academy does it very differently.
Okay.
But it's a
Gotcha.
mix of all those things, like those three things. So the character, the time and grade, and then the competitive nature of it.
Okay. I didn't know if there was like a universal, this is how you move up, that you have to like a standard, I don't know, practice, if you will.
No, I think that's more karate, and maybe that's the
Okay.
like
Okay.
black eye of karate is just like, hey, you're with them 6 months and you get a promotion, and then you're with them another 6 months and you get a promotion. And oh, by the way, you gotta pay, to be a part of that promotion class to get that
Hmm.
next belt. So, and there's I don't even know, 10, 15, different belt levels and stripes and things that you can get. So it gets a little maybe gamified or like incentivized to be a part of that system when maybe it's not fully on learning or competition. So that's what I like about the jiu-jitsu aspect is there's
Hmm.
only five belts and in some academies they do stripes on the belt. So you get up to like four stripes on your belt before getting promoted to the next. Other academies like mine, like they don't do any stripes. So it's like
Hmm.
just the belt. So it can be, yeah, years, multiple years before, getting promoted and earning that. Um, my philosophy on that is I would much rather have it be self-evident that you should be at that promotion versus like
Right.
getting a belt too early. Like I don't want to hold a belt that I can't represent, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
I'd rather have it be maybe too more late than too early, like err on the side of, hey, he should definitely be that belt color, right?
Right.
Should definitely
Yeah.
be a black belt. That guy should deserves to be promoted. So that's kind of how I look at it, whether or not. But I was a purple belt for 7+ years, so
Wow.
you can be at that for a long time. I've been a brown belt now for yeah, just over 3 years. So. And
Wow.
some people they speed run it. I have a good friend outside of Chicago. He got his black belt in 6 years, but he also was at the gym every day, 3 times a day for
Hmm.
those 6 years, in order to gain the skill set and gain the competition, gain the knowledge to be able to do that. And he came from a, high level wrestling background, All American, right? So he had a skill set coming into it that wasn't just from scratch, right?
Yeah.
So.
So I guess what's the ultimate goal here for you? You know, do you think about, I don't know if there's an end goal per se, but you know, something that you're trying to achieve, or are you just sort of doing it until you can't anymore? Like what, I guess, yeah, what is your vision with continuing and doing jujitsu and grappling and stuff?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, become the best possible martial artist that I can,
Hmm.
and which is to me not a finish line goal, like a finite goal. It's an
Right.
infinite goal. It's my whole life. So,
Mhm.
but I also see myself doing jujitsu until I'm 60, 70, 80, until I can't
Really?
physically do it
Okay,
anymore. So it's different from wrestling in the sense of I would call wrestling a lot more grinding, you
for
know?
sure.
And jiu-jitsu is more flow, right? So you're flowing to different positions. So you can be, on your side, on your back, on your butt, and like, roll to these different positions versus like really like fighting for that top position or that scoring position like in wrestling. So yeah, to answer your question, the goal is to just be a lifelong martial artist and continue to work on my craft. Um, of course, I want to earn my black belt and hold that, but also deserve, to carry that and be a good representation of what a black belt means, not only with skill set, but with character and everything off the mat as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, lastly here, you know, have you kind of sat down and ever reflected on like eighth grade Luke Cherep going, okay, I guess my friends are gonna wrestle, let's do it, let's go wrestle. And now here you are, you know, in 2026, two-time NoGi World Champ, wrestle, you walked on and wrestled and competed at University of Missouri, you know, started for them? Like, I mean, have you reflected on kind of where where you started to where you are now and the process and everything and just everything that's gone into it?
Not until this moment. Not really. I'm thinking about it right now. I was kind of thinking about it before, this podcast, obviously. And um, yeah, it's been a 20+ year
Yeah.
journey in grappling and martial arts and wrestling and all the things. And I think if I could take anything away from it, it's just I found a passion, early on. And it wasn't a passion that someone imparted upon me, like externally, like somebody wanted to do for me. Like I found it within.
Hmm.
And, whether it was that summer between sophomore and junior year or, the losses that said, hey, I want to like really commit to this, or, finally having the success and getting the wins and getting a state championship title in Greco, it's like I knew this is something that was going to be part of my identity in some capacity through the rest of my life. So now at 38 in 2026 to look back and all that, history or tenure and time and grade in it is cool. Like I've had a lot of really fun, enjoyable, unique experiences. I've had a really bad, tough, sad, emotionally challenging experiences and even
Mhm.
things, not only the losses, but like injuries. And I've probably broken or strained every bone in my body, every muscle in some capacity. So, like, but all that makes me who I am today. And I get to take those 20 plus years of grappling experience into the rest of my life. And whether it's as a competitor or someone that is involved as a coach, which I am now, of starting a kids coaching wrestling program here in Pacific
Really
Beach starting
nice.
in June. So be giving back some of that knowledge to a younger generation, or just like sport adjacent, whether it's doing a podcast like this or commentating or helping develop, RAF that's coming up and getting on the scene right now, whatever capacity that I can. Um, it's part of my identity and continue to be part of it. So yeah, I'm excited that I found that early on in life and I'm hoping to, as a coach, like give a little bit of that passion back and help kids find it in whatever capacity they want, whether that's in jiu-jitsu or wrestling or other, I want to help them find
Mhm.
that. So
That's awesome. And that is the foundation of a good coach, of a successful coach. So it already sounds like you have what it takes foundationally, you know, to succeed as a mentor and as a coach is that wanting to give back and experiences and pouring those experiences into kids to allow them to hopefully share the same passion as you. That's a very, like I said, foundational piece of any good coach. So it's exciting stuff, man.
definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm pumped for it. And just to touch on the coaching piece one last time, I know we're wrapping up, but I think that there is that element of having the knowledge and giving it back to others. And then, especially as a wrestling coach or any coach, like you're not out there on the mat with the kid, right? So like you got to
Right.
kind of let go and like, hey, it's now in their hands, right? And
Yeah.
I've found even more passion in coaching than in competing myself because when you can share knowledge with someone and they go out there and they use that knowledge and they win and they get their hand raised, it's like, man, that's like the best feeling. So I want, more of those moments coming up, which is why we're, launching this kids wrestling program and hopefully gets a new generation of, wrestlers and competitors getting after it here in San Diego.
Yeah. And, California is an awesome state for wrestling. And, unfortunately, there's the battle with Cal Baptist. But everyone keeps saying that there's so much good wrestling in California. There's just not, you know, the opportunities per se as you kind of um, get up there to the collegiate level, but there's just a lot of good wrestling there. So it's like you're in a good spot. And again, like the passion you have and the foundation you already have seems like just the future's bright, and what is it? The sky's the limit, Any cliche you want to use, that's what I would apply. That's what it sounds like right here is going on with you.
Yeah, there's some elite programs like all throughout the state here. As you know, like California, it's that one bracket, right? For the whole state. They don't divide up into classes like many other states. So yeah, you get like the cream of the crop when you talk about state place winners here and state champions coming from here. And I had an opportunity to work with Granite Hill High School a little bit and some of the kids there, which is out here in
Nice.
El Cajon in San Diego. And one of the kids I worked with, Colin Guffey, worked with him between like sophomore and junior year for about a year, year and a half. He was that kid that he was really talented and just needs like a little bit of like fine tuning.
Mhm.
And man, he ended up winning a state title and going undefeated his senior year. He got
Wow.
a full ride over to Stanford, D1, and he's on the team up there now. So I'm a small percentage part of his journey. He had many, many other coaches and his coaches at the high school and club team that work with him, but it's just cool to, be a part of that and see that success. So that's kind of what I'm talking about is like there's kids like that, whether it's Granite Hill or Poway, which is a powerhouse. I know
Yeah.
Clovis up in Northern California is a powerhouse. There's a lot of like really studs and talent, and not only in California but here in San Diego that we want to start to develop and get to that next level. So um, yeah, I mean whether the programs are here in California or in the Midwest, Big Ten or elsewhere, like there's definitely opportunities across the country to compete, then we want to keep adding more opportunities, obviously not less for wrestlers. So
Right. Well, real quick to tie it back to basically what we started at the very beginning when you said, you
mhm,
just said that you were a very small piece of this kid's success. All the way back at the beginning, you said you were working with this coach, Mike Powell, for two
mhm,
weeks, and that stuck with you. So like all it takes, man, is 2 weeks to leave an impression on somebody and an impact, probably
mhm.
takes less. Like it doesn't take. It can take any amount of time. It can take less than 2 weeks, but like in your instance, 2 weeks is all it took to for someone to leave an impression on you. So just saying.
Yeah, big time. So yeah, I hope to have that impact myself and encourage others to have impact in that same way, with their communities, whether that's a handful of people or a nation or the world, right?
Thanks again for listening to this episode of the Let's Talk Wrestling podcast. Special thanks to my guest, Luke Cherep, for taking the time to sit down and chat with me. Cover art created and designed by Kristen Gill. Please feel free to rate, comment, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also check me out on YouTube, Instagram, and my Facebook page to hear more of my content. And don't forget to check out my website at letstalkwrestlingpodcast.my.canva.site. And as always, be sure to tune in to hear the next guest of the Let's Talk Wrestling podcast. Take care. See you next time.